called me up and asked if I would write his theme song. I'm almost halfway finished. How do you like it so far? How do you like the theme to Gary Show? This is the theme to Gary Show, the opening theme to Gary Show. This is the music that you hear as you watch the credits. We're almost to the part of where I start to whistle. Then we'll watch It's Gary Shandling Show. This was the theme to Gary Shandling Show.
This is my favorite one. What's
going on, everybody? Hit pause here. Hopefully you found that stupid. In this video I just wanted to show you guys real quick how you can get some scrolling text inside of Flash, and actually how you can basically control that inside of UDK. What I've got here is just some debug buttons here, and what I've done is actually put some text here. Now I'm just calling a simple function here. Okay, this would be like a real text that you'd get in the game. Infiltrate the enemy compound, disable their guns, not the theme to Gary Shandling Show. Now, what I did was actually used some characters that I knew I wasn't going to ever really put in text, like the curly bracket here, and I used those to basically time this whole thing. Okay, so I just kind of, you know, put out a bunch of them and played the video back and forth. I just did that to be silly, but just to show you how you can basically control this whole thing. Okay, so here's how it works. When you click, like I said, when you click any one of these buttons, this one just says test 1 2 3. Okay, it calls a root function called speech. All right, now on my scene 1 on my main timeline here, I have that function here called speech. Okay, and it gets past the text as a string. Okay, now what I do is I run some checks. This is all just kind of superficial stuff, completed false and things like that. I clear an interval here, which I'll show you why I do that. I tell the portrait here to go to and play the picture of my professor character. If you have more than one person that can speak in your game, which I'm assuming is usually the case, you could feed it what the name of that character is, okay, and then get that to work. So you can put that here and that would show up there. Then you tell it to play. I reset a variable here. I reset the text so that it's at 0, okay. Then what I do is I set a variable to actually be the past text. Now you'll notice here there's no caps here, okay, and that's this variable here. Now this variable, my text, which gets passed, okay, is only in existence inside of this function. Once this function's ran through all of these lines of code and is done, this variable here gets deleted. This variable that I set, however, is actually defined as a global variable up here. You'll notice I got the capital M and the capital T, and it starts off empty, okay, just 2 quotes. All right, so it does that. It sets the text. Then what it does is this line here, which basically says, okay, any name I want here, fade chat interval, okay, that's what I'm doing, is set interval is a keyword, and then you type the name of your function, and then you type how fast you want it to be in milliseconds. Now speed I have defined here at 50 milliseconds, okay, that's the time that I want it to do. Okay, but I made it a variable so that I could change the speed that the text draws if I want to. So what it's going to do is it's going to fire this function from now on every 50 milliseconds, okay, based on 30 FPS here. Every 50 milliseconds it's going to fire through this whole function. Okay, now what this function does, the trick to the whole thing, is taking whatever text you type and splitting each character into an array. Now when you do a split with basically a null string here, which is there's no space in between these, okay, which means it's going to split every character, okay, and when you split an array, it takes each character and puts it in a new index on the array. Okay, so it just takes every single thing, you know, the T, H, the I, and the S, and it makes the T index 0, the H index 1, the I index 2, the S index 3, and so on until it gets to the end of the string. Okay, now I'm checking, can I type, is that true, which starts off at false. Okay, I can't type it yet, and where it gets set to true is if I come in here, you can see that I have an animation. Okay, it fades in just for the first 5 frames. I get this fading in, then I have this window pop open, and then it does a little bit of a bounce. Okay, so it goes boom boom, a little bit of a bounce there, back and forth, and then when it gets to this line of code, it stops, but it also says that now you can type. Now the window's open, you can type is true, okay? And I'm sending it back to the root timeline because I'm inside of Portrait MC. I need that code to be able to access out here in scene 1 where this is, okay? So it's going to fire this function the first time through. It's going to say, well, can type is true? Well, the animation's still playing, so no. So it doesn't do anything, it just skips. 50 milliseconds later, it tries it again. If it's not done yet, it skips. And so on and so on and so on, till that animation finishes and sets can type to be true. Then it's going to go and say, okay, well now we can go. Now, it's going to check. Remember, I've set an array here. I've turned my text string into an array with every individual element, which now has a length. And in the case of the Gary Shandling's one, it's pretty long. It's like 600 characters or something like that. I don't know. I didn't. You can trace this if you wanted to. Trace the length if you wanted to. But in this case, I don't really care. Okay, how long it is. It can be whatever you want. It could be the Encyclopedia Britannica if you want. So X starts at 0. X, when the movie first opens, starts at 0. Remember, we run speech is what we actually fire. This is like our initialize, okay? This is kind of our reset. And X going back to 0 is part of that, okay? So X is 0, and our length is like 650, and it goes through, and what it does is it checks. If this particular character, which this is how you index 0, okay, of my array, remember what my array is, as long as it's not equal to this curly bracket, go ahead and do this. Now what this does here is it says the test box here, which is this box right here, okay, test box, it's dynamic text, okay, it has a font called Stencil. That font is embedded, okay, it's right here. You can see it came up as font 2. These are all the fonts I have embedded. Stencil happens to be font 2, so it will work in code. You have to embed the font. If you pick a new font, once you pick the new font from whatever you pick on the list, just hit this embed button. And when you do hit embed, what you want to do is just check off all here, and then just hit OK, and you're done. That's all you need to do to embed fonts. Okay. Now, I want to make a point though that not every font works in UDK. They all work in Flash, but they don't all translate over to UDK. If the font comes in and all of your characters look like a bunch of just like rectangles or squares or hollow squares or something, you have to pick a different font. Okay. If you want that exact same font, you have to find another version of it, and there's different types. I don't know which is the kind that doesn't work, but there's open type, true type. There's like 2 or 3 types of fonts, and one of those types don't work in UDK, and I can't go through a giant list or tell you which ones are the ones like exactly. I don't really remember, but just know that if your font doesn't work, for the most part, you've got a big old F on your forehead. You're F'd. Just go pick a new font. You know, find something different. You can get it off the internet if you want. Download it, throw it in Windows Fonts. It'll show up here in the folder. You know, C/Windows/fonts. Just dump it in there. Or go into that folder and right-click and say install new font. It's easy to install fonts on Windows. So what it does is it takes the text here, which is actually empty right now. Okay, that text box is empty because I set it here to be empty. Okay, the text box.text equals. Okay, that's a hard equals. Nothing. Then it plus equals my array, this character. So the first character was a T, okay? So it doesn't equal this, so it's going to go ahead and do that. So it's going to say, okay, well, it's nothing plus T. Go ahead and do that, and then attempt to scroll the window, which is basically move the line of code up. I'll scroll this line here. That's basically what it does, except it doesn't move the character to the side. It just scrolls the window up for you. If the cool thing about Flash is that it's not too stupid that it will try to scroll if it doesn't need to, even if you tell it to scroll. If the text field can hold 4 lines of code and you only have 2 lines in it, or 2 lines of text in it, and you tell it to scroll, it's going to go nowhere because there's nothing to fill in the rest of the space. So it will only scroll when it needs to. So that's why every time a new character is added, I try to scroll the text. Okay, regardless of whether or not this is true, of whether or not I hit this character, I increase X plus 1. Okay, so then what happens is X was still less than the length, okay, because X was 0 and my length was like 650. It runs this code. When it's done, because this is encapsulated in else, is not going to run. Because this was true, else doesn't run. Just remember that. If I didn't have the else here, and I just put this afterwards, this would run guaranteed, and I would be broken. Okay, so it's going to go through every character in the text. Okay, check. The only check it does is whether or not it's this character here, which I just delineated just to tell it to delay itself by one, a 50 millisecond break. Don't display this character is basically what I told it to do. Okay, when it gets to past the end, when it's finally finished, x, remember x increases every time. Once x is no longer less than or equal to the length, it's going to do this code here. This is a keyword for clear interval. The name here matches the name that I named the interval. This name here and this name here can be anything that you want, just make sure that they match each other. Okay, this name here is the name of the function. These two have to match. Okay, this is the speed, which can be any number or variable representing a number. Okay, so we clear that array, which basically stops the function from firing anymore. So after this happens, when this is finished, it's going to get to the end of this function and we're done. It's not going to do anything else. It does reset everything back, sets this back to 0, but it will hang the text open. Okay, I don't reset the text because I don't want it to get to the end and then all the text disappears. So I wait. I don't do that. Then what I do here is an fs command. Fs command is a specific thing that you can use to send to Kismet, okay, and send a completed, or whatever you put here. You can name it anything you want, and then I say completed is true. Okay, now I have a close MC which just checks if completed is true. It clears the movie just in case it wasn't cleared already, which it should have been, but I do it anyway. Okay, doesn't matter, I can put this 50,000 times all over the place, as long as if it's already cleared and stopped, it doesn't make a difference. I reset again. Now I reset my text. I set the text to blank, and I tell the portrait MC to go to and play 31. Now if I go to this portrait MC and I come here at 30, we were told it to stop and we can type. At 31, there's nothing stopping it anymore. So I told it to go to and play 31, so that goes back, closes, and it gets to the end here. When it gets to the end, it sends an fs command called closed. Okay, and I did that just in case I want UDK to know, or I want Kismet to know that the movie has shut and closed itself, because I may or may not want to close the actual GFX. All right, so that's what happens. Again, what we need to tell it to do is this. That's all we need to do. Root speech. Okay, here's a different one. These are just different text that comes up. Please help me, my squad is missing and I'm all that's left. Like again, this is just more of a standard type of thing that you would find in like an actual game, right? So it calls the function root speech, and then what do I want it to say? All right, so when we go to UDK here, what I do is on level loaded, I open the GFX movie. Now remember, when I open the movie, if I hit play here, when I open the movie, it's open, but you don't see anything. It's there, but you don't see anything. Okay, the reason is because I haven't told it to run that speech function yet. So the movie clip that that appears is still hidden and invisible, faded out and masked away, and the text is still blank. It's sitting there though. All right, but if I move into a trigger radius, it will actually come up. Okay, and you can see how slow it's going. But I put another trigger over here that does the same thing, but it's going to be more text and it's going to be much faster. This is the second set of text messages. It's a bit longer, and then I just copied and pasted that a few times just so that it can make sure that everything was going to work. And if I come back over here, it does the first one, and you can see it's much slower. All right, so what I do is basically right here on the remote event. Now these are special triggers that I made. They can be regular triggers. You can just use regular triggers if you wanted to, or you can use trigger volumes. You could write your own shootable trigger or whatever. This is a specific type of trigger called remote touch, okay, and it fires an event called test. This one over here fires a remote event called test2, okay, and that's what I'm using here, test and test2. So I set the speed here. Now what I do is when I open the movie, I set it to a named variable. Okay, variable name is text movie. Okay, I now have copies of those. These are These are actually what they consider named variables. These are the references to that variable, okay? Text movie here. All right, so on that movie player, it's going to set the variable speed, okay? That variable, again, is right here, okay? Speed. I can set any one of these variables from UDK by using GFX set variable. Now, if you want to know where that is, it's new action, GFX set variable, okay? That's exactly identical. That's the same thing. Oh, here's a hint though. If you hold control, did you know you can move these? I didn't know that. You can grab them and move them and let it go. If it can't fit, it'll shift it back, but if it can, it will actually let you move these around. Never knew that. Kind of interesting. So that's what it does, and then what we do is we invoke Actionscript. Now here's something that's kind of weird. Just know that this is the case. Here, I'm setting a variable. It's just called speed. But here, when I call a function, I have to say root dot. Okay, I have to tell it to go to the root. For some reason, I don't have to do that here. You would think that you do because you have to do this inside of Flash itself, unless you're on the root. So apparently I'm on the root, but why am I on the root for this, for setting a variable, but I'm not on the root for this? Because if I take the root out here, it doesn't work. So just know that when you call a function, you got to tell it to go to the right place, okay? Root.speech. Now, you can give it arguments, okay? This comes in blank. So if you want to know where this is, you just go new action, let me do it over here, new action, GFX, invoke Actionscript, okay? When you open that up, you can see the method name, so you can type whatever you want, root.function, whatever it is, okay? You don't include this, okay? And you don't include the parameters like that, okay? You don't do that. You do it like this, root.the name of the function. Arguments, you just add arguments here. This is the first argument that comes through, okay? You can add another one, and you'll get a second argument that comes through, okay? Listed as a 1 here. Now what you do is it has fields here, okay? Boolean, true or false, okay? If it's unchecked, it's false, okay? A number, an integer. A number is a float variable, okay? An integer is a whole number. And then string, you can type whatever you want, okay? And you have to actually define it properly here. Now it gives you the different ones. Undefined you don't want to use. Null you don't want to use. Number, int, string, or boolean, okay? In this case we'd use a string and we'd say, you know, all that, money spamming, you know, fake name kind of thing. All right. This one I don't actually need because I'm only passing the string. Okay. Then what you do is you got to pipe it to the right movie, which would be this guy. Okay. And I'll just switch this over to here. Speed here, remember, is every millisecond. The higher this number is, the slower it's going to go. Okay. So if I do a 1 here and I hit play, I actually started in the trigger volume, so I'll come out. Okay, wait, what did I do wrong? Oh, well, I named it wrong, didn't I? Root.speech. Okay, I just named that function just to show you guys that that's how it went. Okay, see, that comes out really fast. If I do it and I set the speed here to say 1000, that's 1 full second, okay? Wait, let me go here. Make sure I'm out of the window. See how slow it goes? It's 1 character per second. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you can count that out. So we have that control here. Now what I've done in Flash is every time you call, the reason that I do this is if you look here, remember the button just says do the function, right? If I play this and I spam that button, I basically reset everything. Okay, if I spam it really fast, I'm just making him Flash. So it can start, it can do its thing, and I can click it and it just resets. okay? Because it calls the function not close MC, but speech. And remember, speech resets this to false, it sets completed to false, it clears the movie so it doesn't keep playing again, okay? It sets this stuff again, starts it over, go to and play to, it puts it right back to the first frame, resets X to 0, resets the text, okay, and reignites the text here by resetting the pass. Now this wouldn't be necessary if I was hitting the same button over and over again, but this is necessary when you hit different buttons. Because if I hit the long text here, which is this is the theme to Gary show, and then I hit the short one, it will reset still, but it does the different one, okay? So please help me, my squad is missing and I'm all that's left, and I can just cut that out anytime I want and click the other one and it just does the next one. So that's essentially what's happening inside of UDK here, okay? If I come here and I hit this one, that text starts coming out real slow, but if I run over to the next one, it resets and the next text starts coming out at its speed. And I can come back and reset that and go back and forth. Okay? And again, if you just look, I basically put these two triggers right next to each other. Okay? There's just a small little space between them. So, you know what's funny is it looks like Johnny 5 is Alive's eyes, or Wally. So what we do is, really that's all you really need to do. That's about it. I just open the movie to make sure that it's good. I got some other crap here that you can just ignore. This was prior tests. Okay. Now here's the thing. I got another FS command. Okay. Now this is the actual FS command. This receives completed. Okay. Remember, completed happens when the text is done typing out, right? Completed happens here. Right here, which means X is no longer less than or equal to the length. Okay, so it's gone through. This is instantaneous as soon as the text is finished. Completed is instantaneously fired. Okay, so that comes here, and what this does is I have set myself a delay, text open time, because what happens is if I come over here and I hit this text, it's going to type the text out. It's going to say that this is, once this is done, it's going to instantaneously get the completed message, okay, which is going to happen pretty much now. 2, 3, and then it closes itself, okay? It runs that close MC function. That is invoke Actionscript close MC, okay? Notice I'm passing parameters. This is just because I copied this node over here for invoke the Actionscript. I just copied it. You can see it's even got the same text that I originally had in the beginning. But the function itself doesn't have any parameters. Close MC doesn't receive any parameters. It's blank. It's empty. It doesn't need them. It just resets some global stuff up here. So it doesn't hurt to actually have this, but I could very well just delete it. Okay. The key is that I'm calling this 3 seconds later. Now I can set this delay to be whatever I want. However long I want to hold that text open, I set this. Now, I have this one disconnected. This one says when FS command is received closed. Now that command is sent when the animation finishes. Remember, when it's done, when I hit close MC, it's going to tell it to go right here to frame 31. 31 has no restrictions. It now starts to play, gets all the way to here, and then it's going to loop back to the beginning because I don't have anything at the end here to tell it to stop. If I put stop here, it would stop on this frame, but it doesn't. All it does is say FS command closed, and then immediately comes to here. This frame has stop. So when it gets back to the loop point, it's just going to sit there. Okay? So when we get stop, I don't have this hooked up. Okay? Or when we get closed is the name of it. And now, whenever you receive an FS command, you actually have to tell it what movie sent it. Now, this is unfortunate, if you ask me, because this cannot receive from this variable here. This receives from the entire movie clip entity that exists in your game, which is basically a link to where it is in the content browser. So if this movie was supposed to be open on, say, 3 monitors, every single one of them that closes would fire this. Okay? So what you would have to do was run more checks here in UDK to determine which of those monitors is the one that actually closed, which can be quite a monumental task in some cases. Okay? Can be quite strange. All right. Usually what you want to do is actually just duplicate the movie in your content browser, depending on how many you have. If you have 500 of them, you're kind of screwed. Okay. But in this case, what it'll do is it'll just close the movie. Okay. Close GFX, and that can have a link straight to the object that got closed. Now, if I hook this up, if I let one of these close, so this one opens, okay, it goes real slow. This one opens, okay, and I go back and forth. Okay, back and forth works perfectly fine. Now, if I let this one close, which I will do, once that gets to closed, which is now, I come back here, it's gone. Okay? That is just up to you. You have to make that determination as to whether or not you ever want to close this movie. There probably would be a case where, okay, well, I'm no longer giving the player any messages, and they can't go back to go get those messages again. Okay? You'd close the movie now. You could have each movie open itself. So every time that completed is finished, after root MC closed, you would close this. But then what you'd have to do is every time you clicked one of these, it would have to reopen the movie. But you have to be careful, because if you open the movie more than once, you will actually display multiple copies of the movie on top of itself. You've got to be very careful about that. Let me illustrate. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this one out. So when I hit this test 2, I'm actually going to open the movie. I'm going to make a new object variable here. Okay, and I'm going to temporarily tell this Actionscript to run off of this movie instead. Okay, this one I won't have it open. So every time I touch this, I'm going to open the movie. This is the one that's got the long string, I believe. This is the second message. Okay, so this is going to be long string. That stays out, types out faster. Just I don't want it to be so fast that it's just instantaneous. I just want to have some text in there. So what I'll do is I'll keep hitting this one. So boom, there it is. Boom, there it is again. Boom, there it is again. Okay. Boom, there it is again. You can see that I can no longer see through that background. There's actually like 4 or 5 copies of it now, sitting in the exact same spot. Okay, now watch what happens when they're done. They'll all close at the same time. Actually, yeah, they deleted themselves. Right? So that's why you got to be careful about opening. You don't want to keep opening the movie. You'd have to run a check to say, okay, is it open? If it is, see, I had done that here. Is it open? You compare it. If it's not open, then go ahead and open it, but then set it back to open. You know, set open is true, all right? So it wouldn't do anything anymore, and then not allow this if it's doing that. Okay, but in this case, I like doing it like this. I like just keeping the movie open until I know for a fact that I'm completely and permanently done with it, which doesn't matter if you are never done with it, because it will close itself, but that's all Flash, right? It runs the close MC. So that's basically it. Hopefully you guys found that useful. Again, I'll just show you the code one last time. Okay, close MC, just superficial crap. Okay, just clear it, reset my counter variable for counting each character, reset the text itself, tell the portrait to go to and play 31, which will start the closing animation part of the sequence. That's all that. Okay. On speech, which is what gets fired from UDK or test buttons or whatever, we reset all our variables. Okay, completed is false, can type is false. We clear the fade chat interval, so we make sure that we stop firing the function from now on. All right. If we don't do this, it's going to fire again and again and again, and eventually it'll be writing itself at extreme speeds. So you clear it, and I tell it which picture to show. Okay, portraitmc.pictureMC, because if you look here, there's inside here. See, I'm on portrait MC. If I go inside here and I click again, that's picture MC. Okay, if I click inside of here, that's actually the character's picture. Okay, and I name the frame here to be professor. All right, when I finally get more portrait pictures of like a rat and other characters in the game, I can just display them on here and just name them here. Okay, and then what will happen is it will tell, okay, portrait equals professor, it will tell that to go to and play that frame label. All right, then you notice that this is farther back, portrait MC, go to and play 2, okay, which just starts the animation to open. All right, and what I mean by that is when we open our movie, we're sat here on frame 0, which is told to stop. As soon as I hit the button, I tell it to go to frame 2, and there's no more code on any of these. You can see the A, okay, A for Actionscript over this code. It hits 2 and says go to 2 and play. All right, there's 2 ways to write that. You can say go to and play or go to and stop. If I said go to and stop to, it would be sitting right here, and you would see a half faded face, and you would never see the text box open up. But in this case, I told it to go to 2 and play, so it's just going to play through this whole animation, boom, until it gets to here, which is now told to stop. Okay. Also says can type is true, which is why I set that to false here, because I don't want it to start typing until that window's open. Okay. Then completed gets set to false just in case it was happened to be true. Again, I clear the interval, reset my variable, reset the text, reset the variable of the text. Okay, this is my counter, reset my counter, this is my actual string, so I reset that to whatever gets passed, and then I start the function. All right, I start it looping at this speed. Okay, this function at this speed, that's what that is. And again, this just splits the variable. Each character goes to a new index. Okay, I check can I type. If not, this can type encompasses all of this, by the way. All right, that's this entire, basically everything in the function, except for this here, which doesn't matter. All right, so it's just going to keep doing nothing, basically. It'll keep resetting this every time. So I should really probably just put this inside of here too. That'd actually be more efficient. That way, if can't type is true, then nothing is happening. Okay, it's just skipping over everything over and over and over again until the animation's finished and says can't type is true. All right. Then once it is true, then I split the array. I come here and I say, okay, check. Is my counter below the length? Yes. Is it my key character? Is it, as long as it's not my key character? Okay, not equals. It's an exclamation mark equals means not equals. Then add that character to my text of my test box. Try to scroll it in case it needs it. Okay, and regardless of whether or not it did that, go ahead and increase my counter. Do it again. Come back up here. Okay, go through, and this is now 1. Do the next character, checks. As long as it's not that, add it. If it is that, it does nothing. But if it is this, it still counts. I still want to count to the next character. Okay. As soon as I'm no longer too long, as soon as I'm no longer within the length of my array here, I stop firing this function, but it still will complete the rest of the function. Okay. I reset my variable. I tell Flash I tell UDK I'm done, and I tell Flash I'm done. That's it. There's nothing else. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and it's HitPause signing off.